Hello, welcome to the Nerdy Folks Podcast, a conversation about the nerdy things we love and the things that matter most. My name is Matthew Seipel Anderson. I'm the host of the show and chaplain to the nerd community. Today on the show, we're talking about Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Hang out till the end of the show, and you get to hear some fun and exciting news from the nerd world. But first, let's talk about books.
Let's go!
I'm always reading something, listening to something. Books are super important. And this week on the show, I want to talk about a new series I started called The 100 Cupboards by N.D. Wilson. It's not a new series by any means, but it's new for me. Quick synopsis. A boy named Henry discovers a set of magical cupboard doors hidden behind plaster in his Uncle Frank's attic. He and his cousin Henrietta discover that the cupboards lead to other worlds, and that not everyone in Kansas is from this world. So this book was super fun, very magical, literally. It was a little slow moving at first, but the slow parts, the beginning especially, those parts were all really, really enjoyable because the writing is so good and so rich. I love the character of Uncle Frank. He reminds me of my grandfather, my Grandpa Anderson. Grandpa Anderson collected junk with the intention of either fixing it or taking it apart and selling the scrap metal. Uncle Frank's got a barn full of stuff. My grandpa had a garage full of stuff. When I was in high school, my stepbrother started playing bass guitar, and my grandpa goes, "Oh, bass, I've got a bass amp." And he goes up into the woods to his garage full of treasures, literally climbs to the top of the pile, starts pulling cardboard boxes, old, tools, random pieces of plastic junk, and he digs to the bottom and he pulls out this old ancient bass amp. Craziest thing? True story. So anyway, I found Uncle Frank's character really great, and the book has a fun ending. It's got magical characters, and it really just opens the cupboard door, to a new world, and now I'm in the middle of the second book, and things are much faster paced, and you're getting all these connections to other worlds, almost like alternate universes, and it's really cool. So there you go. Check out the 100 Cupboards series. Now it's time to talk about Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew was very fun, and that is the word I would use to describe it. Just a fun adventure story for kids. Get lost, get swept up into some pirate craziness, and they end up finding their way back home and having a battle and being changed into different people by the end. Classic coming-of-age, hero's journey, adventure story, and it was really, really enjoyable. My favorite two characters were Ja Nanawood and SM33. I thought they were both very interesting characters that had their own story arcs. Of course, SM33 is the droid in Skeleton Crew, and when I was thinking about his character and how he evolved throughout the show, I could not help but make a connection to Isaac Asimov. So Isaac Asimov revolutionized science fiction with the book iRobot because he imagined robots with the ability to think independently while also being bound to a set of man-made protocols. The robots in Asimov's stories were bound by 3 laws in particular. First law: a robot must not harm a human or allow a human to come to harm. Second law: a robot must obey human orders unless those orders conflict with the first law. Third law: a robot must protect itself unless that protection conflicts with the first or second law. This framework works a lot like a magic system in a fantasy novel in that it allows our logical minds, which love puzzles and love to figure things out, it gives our minds something to work with as the story's progressing. And so if you read iRobot, which incidentally doesn't really have anything to do with the movie that starred Will Smith back in the early 2000s, That movie was just inspired by iRobot, but really doesn't have any connection. It's its own story. But iRobot is a series of short stories where Asimov has robotic characters and he plays with these three laws of robotics. How might a robot act in a situation that tests these laws? Or how could a robot maybe skirt its way around these laws? Or how could environmental factors play into how a robot would interpret the laws? Really interesting and really influential when you think about all the things that came after this dichotomy of independent thought mixed with built in protocols has really become the way we think about robotical characters in science fiction to a large degree. One clear example is Data from Star Trek. I know that's getting to be a dated example, so maybe I should find a more current example, but Data is always trying to become more human, but he has these things baked into his programming. For example, he can't speak with contractions. And it makes the character really interesting. And that's something that I've said about a lot of these fictional characters is their limitations are what make them interesting. And that's why I always gripe about Superman, but we're not going down that road today. I hope you love Superman, and I hope you love the new Superman movie. We've got an episode about that, actually, a few back, so definitely check that episode out. But back to SM-33. He's our droid and skeleton crew. He adds a dash of spice to the show, and even danger. So he is programmed with the Pirate's Code. And so that guides him. That's like the human protocol side. But he's also damaged and a bit random. So it adds this weird element of humor, but also danger because you don't know when his circuits are going to fritz a little bit and he's going to maybe interpret the pirate's code in an odd way. And I love that. But again, it goes back to the picture that Isaac Asimov created of robots and what robots could be or would be in the future. And we've just grabbed onto it. And here it is again in Star Wars. The character that's probably the most talked about in Skeleton Crew is John Nanawood. He's the character who is force sensitive. We knew he was force sensitive right from the get-go, but was he going to be good? Was he going to be bad? This was the mystery. And what was his backstory? Was he a former Inquisitor? Was he a former Jedi? Was he a former Padawan? And we didn't get his backstory until the very final episode. And this episode did something really, really cool, in my opinion. It didn't give us a definitive answer about whether he was good or bad. I would say for the purposes of the show, he was bad. He was mean to the kids. He attacked at Aden and took it over with his big, cruiser full of pirates. So definitely he turned out to be the villain of the show. However, in the final moments of the show, you just get this little glimmer because, one, he doesn't hurt any of the kids or their parents. He always shows this restraint because I think there's a little attachment there. When he sees the ship go down with KB in it, he's broken up. He's mad. He says it didn't have to be this way. I think there was some true regret in that moment. And then when he realizes that all is lost, he's not going to get away with, taking over a planet and having an unlimited supply of credits. He just lowers his guns, and we don't really know what happens to him. I'm going to assume he does not get caught, and I'm going to assume that we will see him again. Now, I had made predictions earlier on that I thought they were going to do a redemption story for his character, and I was totally wrong. Although, we'll see. In time, I might not be totally wrong. They could do some kind of redemption thing with him. In my opinion, what would be cool is if they made him into a Han Solo type character, a Star Wars anti-hero who could use the Force but in a really limited way. That would be really cool. That would make for a really interesting character, and I would love it if they did that with him. He could also continue down a darker path and be recruited as an Inquisitor or something like that, but I don't think he would go for that. I think he's too independent, and I think he has a soft spot inside of him. He's still that wounded kid who didn't have any parents and then was adopted and then saw their adopted, Jedi master killed. And so he's kind of just this damaged, hurting individual. That could be a path to the dark side, but I don't think so. I don't think they would do that with him. Also, he's just kind of stinking likable. Even when he blasts Brutus and kills Brutus, that was really the moment, right, where he reveals his true colors, like he is in it for himself and he's taking things back. Even that moment, we kind of go, well, Brutus had just promised to kill him, and maybe that's his, quote, Han shot first moment. I remember there used to be t-shirts that said Han shot first, and if you don't know, that's a reference to the original cut of the original trilogy. When they first encounter Han, Han is being confronted by this bounty hunter, and Han gets out his blaster and shoots the guy from under the table because the guy's about to bring him in to collect a bounty on his head. Later on, when George Lucas added a bunch of extra special effects and re-released the original trilogy, he edited that scene to make the character, I think the character's name was Greedo, he made it look like Greedo pulled his gun and then Han was just faster. But in the original one, Han was like, oh no you don't, you're not bringing me in, and he shot first. And it just made Han look like a tough guy. So maybe this is just Jod's Han shot first moment, and maybe we can forgive him for it. I think one of the reasons why Jod is so likable is because he is flawed, and we're flawed, and we feel it. And maybe you're out there today and you're carrying some kind of heavy weight of guilt and shame. I want to tell you that you're not alone. So many people have things in their life that they're not proud of, and they carry the burden and the guilt and the regret of those things every single day. And it's a heavy burden. And I just want to encourage you today, as chaplain to the nerd community, that God sees you and he loves you despite whatever you've done and whatever kind of past you've had. My encouragement to you would be to let those feelings that you have push you towards the love of God. The Bible says in Philippians 2:3, God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him. And it all starts with a relationship with God through Jesus, just asking him to forgive you of those things from your past, and then trusting that he has forgiven them, and then move forward and embrace the truth that God does love you. Well, I hope they do a second season of Skeleton Crew. Honestly, man, Star Wars has been in a slump lately as far as viewership, so I don't know if they're going to do a second season of Skeleton Crew. And if you're like me and you're looking forward to more Star Wars and Marvel movies that are coming up, you might be interested in some news. Well, Andor, which is a Star Wars show, Andor Season 2 is coming out on April 22nd of this year. There have been some news stories that the 2 seasons of Andor cost $645 million. Woo! That is expensive. Yowzas. If you like animation, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man comes out on January 29th, just a few days away on Disney+. Captain America Brave New World is coming out February 14th, Valentine's Day. And then Marvel has lost their mind. 3 movies in 3 months. Thunderbolts hits theaters on May 2nd, Ironheart on June 24th, and Fantastic Four on July 25th. Man, so much stuff coming out. Well, we love you. We want to connect with you. Head over to nerdyfolks.com. You can support the show through our Patreon or just give us a donation. That would mean the world. Be so awesome. And you can send us an email, connect with us. Until next time, love you. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.